I'm Mr. Midnight Hollow, your chilling host, and you're about to hear the full story in today's episode of Terrifying Encounters. Today, I've uncovered a tale of an abandoned werewolf sanctuary, hidden rituals, and a terrifying fight for survival against creatures thought to be extinct, and much more. If you're already part of our community, your support means the world to us. Each like, comment, and share helps uncover more stories like this. Or subscribe to see what is drawn out from the darkness and revealed to the world. Now, let's begin. Colorado Springs, late autumn, blew dry through the pine-lined streets, and the snow had not yet fallen, but the cold already dominated the early mornings. On the outskirts of the city, just a few kilometers from the Rocky Mountains, there was an isolated property where civilization seemed to end. Amanda Keller lived there. A trauma nurse at UC Health Memorial Hospital, she chose isolation after losing her parents in a car accident. She bought the old house with their insurance money, fled the big city, and plunged into a silent life, divided between the hospital and solitude. One night, coming back from her shift, Amanda noticed something unusual on the dirt road leading to her house. The car's headlights illuminated a figure lying on the side of the road. She stopped, got out with her phone's flashlight, and walked slowly, her eyes alert. She expected to find a hit dog, maybe a raccoon. But what she saw was bigger. It was a cub, a tiger cub. It had dried blood on its paws, labored breathing, and its eyes half shut in pain. Amanda looked around as if expecting to see someone with a camera playing a prank. Nothing. The silence of the countryside was absolute. She knelt down, slowly placed her hand on the animal's belly. She felt the ribs. It was malnourished. And even in that state, the cub tried to lick her fingers. That was enough. Amanda picked up the animal with effort, wrapped it in a blanket from the car, and took it home. She knew it was illegal to keep a tiger, but she also knew what leaving it there would mean. It would be devoured by coyotes or freeze to death before sunrise. For weeks, she cared for him as if he were a child, feeding him with a syringe at first, clandestine antibiotics, constant warmth. She cleared half the basement, made a safe space. She called him Raja, like the tiger from her childhood movie. As days went by, the bond between them became impossible to ignore. Amanda talked to him, slept on the floor next to his improvised bed, read to him. And the tiger responded with long gazes, resting his head on her chest, with a breath that soothed her own anxiety attacks. Raja grew, too fast. Before Amanda realized it, he was already nearly 2 meters long. His shoulders reached her waist, and his teeth could snap a cow's bone. But he never hurt her, never even growled at her. The routine changed. Amanda reinforced the basement, built a secret entrance inside the house. He only went out at night, in the fenced yard, under her watchful eye. She trained Raja to understand commands, respond to gestures, even control his predatory instinct. It was a risk, an insane risk. But she didn't care. Solitude was now inhabited by a presence that made her feel something she had long forgotten: purpose. But Colorado Springs began to change. At first, it was just comments, whispered conversations at the market, in bank lines. They found another deer with its guts scattered on the park trail. Looks like something attacked a trail dog, but the bones were too clean. Amanda listened silently, avoided contact, kept Raja even more hidden. But she knew, and it haunted her at night, that her tiger would never have left the property, would never have touched anyone. Then came the human deaths. The first victim was a teenager. He had gone camping with friends near Garden of the Gods. The tent was found destroyed. The body, or what was left of it, was 50 meters deep into the woods, hanging from a tree like a piece of raw meat. The head had been ripped off. The police thought it was a bear, then a mountain lion. But the cuts on the ribs, the way the muscles were torn at angles too deep, all indicated something different. The second victim was a middle-aged woman jogging on the Palmer Park morning trails. Her torso was found on one side of the trail, the legs on the other. The heart had disappeared. Now fear gripped the city. Journalists came from Denver. Helicopters hovered over the parks. Volunteer hunters organized, armed with rifles and night vision cameras. The city grew increasingly silent after nightfall. Amanda watched everything on television, stroking Raja's massive neck as he slept in the corner of the room, like an old lion. His eyes moved even in deep sleep. She couldn't sleep either. Then, on one of those freezing nights, she woke to a sound that came neither from the television nor the house. It was a distant growl, scraping the air, followed by heavy steps in the woods. Raja rose, eyes fixed on the door, ears flattened, his entire body on alert. Amanda knew in that instant that something had crossed the forest's boundary, something that didn't smell like a bear, nor a mountain lion, something denser, darker, more ancient. She whispered to Raja to stay, took her father's old rifle, which he kept locked in the closet, and positioned herself in front of the back door. Silence returned for a moment. And then she heard it. Something breathing behind the wooden wall. Amanda kept her finger on the trigger, eyes fixed on the back door. The sound outside stopped for a moment, but the tension was almost physical, thick in the air, as if something out there was deciding its next move. Raja didn't move. He stayed near the stairs leading to the basement, crouched, muscles tense, claws half exposed on the wooden floor. He didn't growl. He only observed. And that scared Amanda more than any roar. The doorknob rattled. It was quick, like someone had scraped a fingernail across it. There was no wind, no animals that would do that. Amanda didn't think twice. She stepped back 2 paces and aimed the rifle at the door. It was loaded, but the weight of the weapon wasn't enough to hide the vulnerability pounding in her chest. "I have a gun," she said, loud, firm. "Whoever you are, leave now." Silence. Then, slowly, the footsteps began to move away. She heard them. 3, 4, 5 heavy steps toward the woods surrounding the property. Amanda waited, counted silently to 50. Only then did she lower the weapon, her hands trembling. Raja remained motionless, his eyes only relaxed when she turned to him. The next morning, she found marks in the snow in the backyard, strange footprints. They looked human, but bigger, much bigger. And there were parallel grooves, as if something with enormous claws had dragged itself through the snow. She took photos, erased the prints, and told no one. Colorado Springs was already in panic. A woman living alone with a hidden tiger in the basement didn't need extra attention. But in the city, things were getting worse. At the local police station, reports were piling up. One of the sheriffs, Jordan Miles, a veteran with 20 years on the force, began to trace patterns. The attacks occurred on full moon nights, always near the woods. And the bodies? They were becoming more violent. In one of the latest cases, a hunter's body was found without skin. The face had been ripped off with grotesque precision, as if the creature wanted to completely disfigure the victim. A local newspaper tried to publish a story with the images, but the sheriff blocked it. He said the city couldn't handle seeing that. Some residents began to talk about the possibility of something supernatural. Old stories brought by immigrants. An old man named Thomas Seaver, who lived on the outskirts of town, started walking around the square with handmade signs saying the werewolf had awakened. Amanda listened to everything, silent. But something inside her began to change. She started reinforcing the windows with wooden planks, installed motion sensors, and began training Raja differently. She created signals for him to attack. taught him to differentiate the sounds of wind and footsteps. She was building a protector. Or, as she began to whisper to herself, a sentinel. One night, when the external alarm went off, she didn't hesitate. She went out with Raja, both alert to the surroundings of the property. Nothing was visible, but the sensor had detected something big. Amanda then installed thermal cameras in strategic spots, and what they recorded was enough to make her blood run cold. The following morning, while reviewing the footage, she saw it. A figure passed between the trees. Tall, unhuman shoulder width. It walked like a man, but it wasn't a man. The posture was hunched, arms hung heavy, and the head was elongated, with triangular ears that moved at the slightest noise. Raja, watching with her, let out a low, hoarse sound. Not of fear, of threat. As if he knew what it was. "You know this thing, don't you?" Amanda whispered, more to herself than to him. The newspapers began to lose control of the narrative. The authorities no longer hid it. There was something killing people. Something no one could track or understand. A creature nearly 2.5 meters tall, with claws capable of tearing concrete, teeth that could snap bone, and an insatiable thirst for blood. Then, on the last full moon night of that month, the city stopped. All the lights were turned off at 8 o'clock. Curfew. Armed guards in the parks, night vision drones, volunteer hunters spread out. And even so, there were 2 more deaths. A couple, residents of a house near the Cheyenne Mountain Reserve. The front door was broken down, the living room destroyed. The man's body was found pinned into the wall like a nail in wood. The woman was torn apart in the bedroom. Neighbors said they heard roars, but no gunshots. That same night, Amanda slept with Raja lying on the floor beside her bed. She couldn't explain why, but she felt the time was coming. That thing, whatever it was getting closer, and she needed to be ready. In the days that followed, Amanda began living like a fugitive in her own home. She grew increasingly obsessed with security, installed traps around the property, reinforced interior doors with steel bars, and, with the help of underground dark web forums, began studying defense tactics against predators. Not common predators, but intelligent predators. Predators that knew when to attack. That waited for the right moment to kill. As the city of Colorado Springs sank into collective fear, Amanda dove into preparation. Raja, now weighing nearly 600 pounds, had become an imposing creature. His body was covered in dense muscle, striped fur shimmering under the light of the renovated basement, and his eyes had an almost human glow when he stared at Amanda at night. She could feel it. That animal understood her. Not the way a dog understands its owner, but the way a soldier understands a battle companion. During the day, she kept the curtains closed and did everything possible to maintain routine with Raja inside the house. She fed him a calculated diet, enriched with protein and veterinary supplements ordered under false names. No one could know. No one should even imagine she was keeping an animal capable of ripping a person apart with a single swipe. At night, the atmosphere changed. Amanda trained Raja as if they were preparing for war, simulated invasions, tested his reactions to strange sounds, conditioned responses to verbal commands. She began sleeping with the gun next to her bed, her phone linked to every security monitor. She was no longer just a lonely nurse. She was the only line of defense between the beast she raised and the thing coming from outside. In the city center, residents were in collapse. The mayor declared an unofficial state of emergency. Sheriff Miles began being accused of incompetence. There was panic in supermarkets, misinformation on social media, and leaked images of crime scenes circulated on conspiracy forums. Schools shortened operating hours. Churches filled up. Armed citizen groups began patrolling the edges of trails with rifles and flashlights. It was like living in a city under siege by an invisible enemy. And it struck every full moon. The sheriff called a public meeting. Amanda didn't go, but watched it live on the local broadcast. Miles looked visibly exhausted, his eyes bloodshot, his beard unkempt. When one of the reporters asked if they were dealing with some kind of wild animal, he hesitated for 3 seconds too long. "It's not a bear," he finally said. "And it's not a mountain lion. Whatever it is, I've never seen anything like it." Absolute silence. On the screen, an elderly woman stood up and screamed, "This is the devil's doing! This is punishment! We're being hunted by something not of this world." No one laughed. No one interrupted her. Amanda turned off the TV. That same night, something new happened. Amanda was lying down, Raja stretched out on the rug beside her, when her phone buzzed with an external motion alert. She opened the backyard camera and froze. There, at the edge of the woods between 2 trees, stood a figure. Tall, thin, covered in shadows, standing still, just standing, watching the house. Amanda didn't breathe for a few seconds. The figure remained motionless for nearly 2 minutes, then slowly turned and disappeared into the forest. She got up, pulled on her boots, grabbed the rifle, and walked to the door. Opened it carefully, barrel aimed into the darkness. The night was colder than usual. The wind seemed to blow heavier, and there was something in the air. A smell. Iron. Amanda recognized that smell. Blood. She walked down the 3 steps of the porch and turned on the flashlight. On the backyard ground, near the fence, she saw red marks on the snow. But it wasn't human blood. They were large drops, as if something was bleeding while moving. She followed the trail, the light trembling in her hand. The trail led her to the edge of the forest, and then, there, beside a large rock, Amanda found something. A rabbit. But it was torn in half, not by teeth, by claws. The entrails were scattered, the bones exposed, and the cut had been clean, almost meticulous. She swallowed hard and stepped back. When she returned inside, she locked everything and spent the night awake. The next day brought more news. A police officer had disappeared during a night patrol in the southern part of the city. His car was found still with the engine running. The doors were open. Inside, only the radio, spitting static. Amanda watched the reports while Raja paced the room, restless. He felt something, walked in circles, sniffed the air, looked at the door as if something on the other side was calling. She approached him and placed her hand on the animal's chest. The heart was racing. "I know, baby," she said, her voice trembling. "It's coming." The following morning, the city woke to sirens echoing in the distance. Amanda, still awake, saw the notification on her phone. Officer found dead. Investigation ongoing. But the image leaked before the police lockdown was worse than anything she could have imagined. The officer's body was hanging upside down from a tree on the outskirts of Broadmoor, one of Colorado Springs' wealthiest neighborhoods. His arms had been ripped off, the skin on his face stripped with surgical precision. The mouth still open, the eyes dilated. The image was removed from the internet within minutes, but the damage was done. Amanda didn't leave the house in the following days. She knew the authorities were lost. She also knew the press had discovered more than they were revealing. But above all, she was certain that monster was getting closer. Each attack was a tightening circle around her. She began preparing the house like a bunker, bought tactical flashlights, extra ammo, new locks, cut off any contact with the outside world. Her only companions now were Raja, and the tension growing like a suffocating weight around the property. The next night, Amanda woke up to a sharp noise coming from the side of the house. A loud crash. The external camera installed there had been destroyed. The image froze in a black blur before going dark. She jumped out of bed, grabbed the shotgun, and ran downstairs with Raja at her side. The animal was already in fighting stance, breathing fast, body pressed to the floor. Amanda moved into the living room, turned off all the lights, and stayed in absolute silence. The house was surrounded by tall trees, which cast long, deep shadows under the moonlight. The wind dragged through the leaves, but inside the air was motionless. Then, something fell on the roof. Raja lifted his head and let out a low growl. Amanda aimed the shotgun at the ceiling, eyes fixed on the boards above. She moved slowly, silent steps, toward the back door. And then she saw it. A silhouette passed by the window. Fast, much taller than a man, and with arms far too long. She stepped back, her heart pounding in her throat. She felt she was about to face something that didn't belong to nature, something that shouldn't exist. Raja positioned himself in front of the door. Amanda knew he wouldn't let her face it alone, and she also knew that he, even being a beast, was her only real chance to survive. Silence returned, but it was that heavy, oppressive kind of silence, as if the house itself was holding its breath. Amanda waited. Finger on the trigger, sweat running down her forehead. Then, a metallic sound. It was the basement hatch, the only entrance Amanda never locked from inside, because Raja used it to go out at night, and she trusted he would always return. Amanda ran. She rushed down the steps with Raja sprinting behind her. But it was too late. The hatch was open. Something had entered. She pointed the flashlight into the dark basement, illuminating shelves, boxes, tools. The beam trembled slightly in her hand. Raja moved forward, ears flattened. Amanda couldn't see anything, but the tiger sensed it. There was something there with them. Then, from the back of the basement, a sound. A heavy dragging, like claws on concrete. She aimed in that direction and pulled the trigger. The blast lit up the room but hit only wooden crates, which shattered into splinters. Raja lunged into the darkness, disappearing into the shadows. Amanda ran after him, the flashlight swinging wildly. That's when she saw it. For just an instant, the reflected light revealed something. A pair of yellow eyes, low, just a few meters from Raja. The creature was crouched, waiting. The eyes were large, almost oval, without pupils. And then it vanished. Amanda screamed, "Raja! Back!" But it was too late. A loud thud echoed in the basement when Raja's body was thrown against a stack of boxes. Amanda ran to him, kneeling by the animal. He was conscious but wounded, a long gash on his back bleeding intensely. She pushed him back with difficulty toward the stairs, but then something dropped between them. A shadow, too fast. Amanda raised the gun and fired again. The shot hit something. She heard it. But the creature didn't fall, it only recoiled. 1 second, 2. And then disappeared again, into the darkness. She seized the opening, grabbed Raja with all her strength, and dragged him toward the stairs. She slammed the hatch shut, locking it with 2 reinforced internal bolts. She collapsed onto the living room floor, panting, Raja bleeding beside her, the ground stained red. Her face was drenched in sweat, her eyes wide, but distant. She whispered through clenched teeth, "This isn't just a monster. This is a curse." The next day, Amanda stitched Raja's wounds using the same technique she used during her hospital shifts. She administered painkillers, fluids, and antibiotics. She knew he would survive, but she also knew that next time, neither of them might be so lucky. The city was already in complete collapse. Colorado Springs now lived under an official curfew. No one walked the streets after sunset. Many residents had abandoned the city. National media began speculating about organized attacks by genetically modified wolves. An absurd theory, but it spread far too quickly. But Amanda knew. This wasn't folklore. This wasn't an experiment. It was a monster. And now, it knew the way to her house. The trails at North Cheyenne Canyon Park were closed to the public. It was a cloudy morning, the kind of sky that feels heavy on your shoulders. Amanda parked her car a few meters from the cordon tape. She was dressed like one of the search teams. Vest, flashlight clipped to her chest, dirty boots. The messy hair and dark glasses to hide her sleepless eyes completed the disguise. She used a fake ID she had secured weeks earlier. She knew the next attacks would come from that direction. She also knew the creature was growing bolder. But now, she wanted to see. She wanted to understand what they were facing. Maybe find a weakness. A clue the police were hiding, or the newspapers were too afraid to reveal. The smell of wet forest mixed with something else, something metallic, heavier. Amanda knew the smell of death, and it was here, soaked into the soil. 3 FBI agents stood talking a few meters from the main trail entrance. One of them held a clipboard with photos. Amanda approached slowly, pretending to check her gear. She overheard part of the conversation. "The cuts are clean, too deep. We're dealing with something that knows exactly what it's doing. This isn't a normal animal." "No animal does this," replied the other. "This was surgical." The images on the clipboard showed bodies, or what was left of them. The first was a man, partially devoured, the lower half of his body ripped away from the torso. His entrails were scattered over a 10-meter radius. The second was a woman, hung upside down from a tree, missing both eyes and palms. The third was just a head. Jaw dislocated at a grotesque angle, eyes frozen in one last instant of absolute terror. Amanda turned her gaze away, not because she couldn't handle it, but because she needed to control her anger. She felt, in every cell of her body, that this was more than predatory instinct. It was a kind of sadism, a cruel intelligence. The creature killed not just for hunger, but for pleasure. Or worse, for some reason no one yet understood. She walked down the main trail, disguising her advance while the agents were distracted. She had little time before anyone noticed her. When she reached a secluded clearing where the last body had been found, Amanda crouched. The soil was still soaked with dried blood, mixed with dirt. But there was something else. Tracks. Not paw prints, not exactly. They looked human but elongated, as if the feet had extra bones. The toes were too long, and there were deep grooves as if claws extended from the tips. She quickly took photos with her phone. Then she noticed a larger mark, as if something had been dragged. A body? Or the creature itself? The sound of voices forced her to leave. She hid behind a tree until the agents passed. When they were far enough, she returned to the car, heart pounding. Back at the house, Amanda spent hours analyzing the images. She used editing software to increase the contrast on the footprints. She compared them to wolves, bears, big cats. Nothing matched. In one of the files, she noticed something she had missed. There were strands of fabric stuck in the vegetation, as if the monster wore clothes, or something similar. The thought made her shiver. The possibility that the creature had a human origin. Or worse, that it had once been human. She remembered the stories. Old legends. Indigenous tales of men turning into monsters during the full moon. She had always thought they were folklore, metaphors. But now, she was staring at living proof that maybe humanity had buried the truth out of fear, out of ignorance. That night, Amanda cared for Raja, who was still recovering from the previous attack. He lay in the basement, gauze wrapped around his back, breathing slowly. But his eyes stayed alert. She stroked his head, the weight of the massive creature suddenly feeling more human than anyone in town. They don't know what they're facing, my friend, but we do. We see it up close. Raja looked at her as if he understood everything. Outside, the wind began to howl stronger. And Amanda knew the next full moon was close. And with it, the next hunt. 2 days before the full moon, the city of Colorado Springs was taken over by sirens. An entire family had disappeared in a remote area north of Bear Creek Park. Father, mother, 2 children. They went for a picnic and never came back. Rescue teams arrived at the scene by dusk and found only what was left: a shattered basket, broken toys, and blood splattered on the rocks. The bodies? Nothing. Only claw marks on trunks too high for any local animal to reach. Deep gouges, as if something had climbed the pines with the victims, one by one. Amanda watched the live broadcast on her phone, jaw clenched. The rescuers' expressions left no doubt. They knew they were dealing with something impossible to explain. And yet, no one said the word. Everyone avoided naming the creature, as if speaking it aloud would give it power. That night, Amanda locked herself in the basement with Raja. They were ready for another offensive, but nothing happened. Not that night. The next day, before sunset, she drove downtown. She needed fuel, more supplies, and bapwe, above all, ammunition. She entered a hunting shop she'd known for years, where the owner was a retired military man named MacDougall, from whom she always bought without questions. "Going bear hunting, Amanda?" he asked, seeing the amount of cartridges and projectiles she placed on the counter. She stared at him, her tired eyes, her face thinner than usual. "Not exactly." MacDougall didn't press. But when Amanda grabbed the bag and turned to leave, he murmured something that made her stop. "There's something out there that shouldn't exist, isn't there?" She didn't answer, just walked away. As night fell, the house was locked from the inside. All sensors were active, the floodlights ready to trigger at the slightest movement. Raja was moving with more strength now, his wounds healing better than expected. Amanda adjusted the cameras and sat in front of the monitors, rifle loaded by her side, waiting. It was a full moon. The tension in the air was unbearable. Amanda couldn't relax for even a minute. Raja paced back and forth in the basement, muscles rippling beneath his striped fur. He sensed it. Something was coming. Midnight arrived. Silence. Total silence. Not even the crickets dared to sing. Then one of the alarms went off. South sector, near the shed. Amanda grabbed the rifle, slipped on the bulletproof vest, and went down with Raja glued to her steps. The two crossed the basement and exited through the side hatch. The night was cold. The full moon painted everything in a pale, morbid silver. The sensor had been triggered, but there was no sound, no movement. They walked in silence, eyes scanning every shadow. Amanda kept the rifle steady, senses sharp. Raja moved low, like a predator stalking prey. Then she saw it. On the side of the shed, nailed into the wooden wall, there was something. A skull. Human. Pinned by the jaws, as if something had jammed it there with its own claws. Around it, marks in the wood. Deep, irregular cuts like claws had danced in a macabre frenzy. Amanda approached, stomach turning. The bone was still fresh. The flesh around the sockets had been ripped away. And inside the mouth, a piece of tongue still clung. She stepped back. Raja let out a guttural sound and looked toward the trees. Amanda followed his gaze. 20 meters away, between the dark tree trunks, there was something. Tall. Still. Yellow eyes glowing under the moonlight. The creature didn't move. Neither did Amanda. For a moment, Everything froze. Then she whispered, "Let's back away." Slowly. But Raja didn't obey. He lunged. Amanda tried to stop him, but the tiger was already charging, sprinting toward the shadow, ready for the fight. The creature vanished between the trees. Amanda ran after him, rifle ready, heart pounding like a drum. The forest seemed muffled, as if even nature itself was hiding from this moment. She ran until she lost sight of Raja, until the sound of his steps faded. Then she heard it. A roar of pain. Raja had been hit. Amanda ran toward the sound, eyes searching for any sign. When she reached a clearing, she found the tiger lying down, a deep gash across his flank, but he was still alive. Beside him, no creature, no shadow. She knelt, pressing her hand to Raja's neck. Warm blood was flowing. Not this time. Not now. That's when she heard footsteps behind her. She spun instantly, nothing. But the eyes, those eyes, were back, at the edge of the darkness, watching. The city of Colorado Springs no longer slept. In neighborhoods near the green zones, houses were abandoned overnight. Local newspapers spoke of an exodus. Helicopters hovered over the forest edges day and night. Heavily armed police patrolled residential areas, but the attacks didn't stop. On the contrary, they became bolder, more violent. 3 teenagers had vanished in the Rockrimmon area during the last full moon. They found only the remains of one, the head inside a backpack, the body split into 4 pieces and arranged in the shape of a cross. No animal would do that. No natural predator played with corpses. Amanda watched chaos unfold as if living in a war zone. Only this time, the enemy was a single creature, invisible. One that knew when to strike, where to hurt, and that had now claimed its presence on her territory. She spent the entire night tending to Raja's wounds. The gash on his flank had reopened, and he moved with difficulty. Even so, he didn't seem ready to give up. His gaze was filled with silent fury. Amanda felt the same. They were becoming alike, 2 survivors on the brink of exhaustion, preparing to face something that looked like it had crawled straight out of hell. That afternoon, she decided she wouldn't wait for the next attack passively. She called old McDougal. "I need more ammo, and I need it now." He didn't ask questions, said he'd meet her on the old road, away from the police blockades. At sunset, Amanda drove with Raja in the back seat of the pickup truck, covered by a camouflaged tarp. She drove in silence for 20 minutes until she found the old man at the side of the road, parked next to his military jeep. McDougal greeted her with a serious look. He took a wooden box from his trunk and handed it over without a word. "This should stop anything," he said finally. "Anything that's still alive." Amanda opened the box. Shotgun cartridges with custom ammo, silver bullets, a mix of hard metals and incendiary compounds. Weapons not for sale. Things even he wasn't supposed to have. "You know what's out there, don't you?" she asked. He only nodded. "Some folks have always known. They just never wanted to believe it. They called it legend, folklore, and now they're paying the price." Amanda closed the box and headed back to her truck. Before leaving, McDougal said one more thing. "It won't stop. It's chosen you. And it's coming back." That night, Amanda prepared everything. Traps with thermal sensors. Homemade pressure mines around the woods. Night vision cameras. Every entrance of the house was barricaded with heavy furniture. And in the basement, a reinforced space stocked with food, weapons, and medical supplies. The plan wasn't just to resist. It was to survive the siege. Raja stayed alert, but exhaustion weighed on him. Amanda knew the animal wouldn't withstand another long fight. They would have to end it quickly, or die trying. The moon rose in the sky like a curved blade. The house sank into silence, and then the first alarm went off. North sector, then west, then south. Within seconds, every sensor had been triggered. Amanda stared at the screens. Nothing. The image trembled. Signals scrambled. And then, the front camera froze on a horrifying frame. Yellow eyes staring directly into the lens. The screen went black. "It's here," she whispered. Raja struggled to his feet. Amanda grabbed the shotgun, a hunting knife, and headed down to the basement. Minutes passed. No sound. Then, from upstairs, the crash. Something had smashed through the front door. The sound of the splintering wood thundered through the entire house like a dry explosion. Amanda kept the shotgun aimed at the basement stairs, her eyes fixed on the darkness above. Raja stood beside her, in full attack stance, his body arched and muscles tense. His breathing was fast but steady. They both knew the thing had entered. Amanda didn't scream, didn't run. She knew the smallest noise could cost her life. She was the hunter now, but also the prey. And the monster above, whatever it was, wasn't just breaking in. It was enjoying it. The footsteps began echoing on the first floor. Slow, heavy. The wood creaked beneath the weight of the creature, as if the floor had never been built to support that kind of presence. Amanda stood perfectly still, finger on the trigger, eyes unblinking. Raja moved slightly away from her, circling around to the darkest corner of the basement. Amanda knew what he was doing. He was setting up an ambush. He understood tactics. He was more than a trained animal. He was a predator trained to protect his pack. A louder creak. The stairs. The creature was beginning to descend. Amanda saw the shadow moving along the opposite wall. It was massive. The steps groaned beneath the beast's weight. It moved without hurry, as if it knew the end was near. As if it was certain this fight was inevitable. Then the first glimpse. The eyes. 2 yellow globes appeared out of the stairwell darkness, glowing like torches in a tunnel of nightmares. Amanda raised the weapon and fired. The blast filled the basement with smoke, fire, and shock. The shot tore through the air and hit something halfway down the stairs. A guttural grunt. A loud impact. Something fell backward. Amanda reloaded. Waited. Silence. For a moment she thought she had done it. But then, a scraping sound, like claws raking concrete. The creature was still alive. Raja moved first. He leapt from the shadows toward the stairs. Amanda screamed his name, but the tiger had already vanished into the darkness. The sounds of the struggle were immediate. A brutal impact. Bones colliding, claws tearing flesh. Amanda rushed up, shotgun raised, and saw it. In the destroyed living room, Raja fought something that looked ripped straight from humanity's darkest nightmares. The creature was humanoid, but deformed. Its face was a grotesque blend of lupine muzzle and human features. A hybrid horror that should never have existed. Its skin was gray, patchy with coarse fur. Its claws were the size of machetes, and its eyes were human. Human and hungry. Raja sank his teeth into the creature's shoulder. It retaliated with a brutal blow to his ribs, throwing the tiger against the wall and toppling part of the bookshelf. Amanda didn't hesitate. She fired again. The shot exploded against the creature's flank, burning flesh on impact. The stench of scorched meat filled the air. But it didn't fall. It charged. Straight at Amanda. She fired again, but the monster dodged. She stumbled backward, tripped over the stair base, and hit the floor hard. The creature lunged, claws raised for the killing strike. Then Raja came back. The tiger slammed into the beast with the force of a speeding truck. They rolled across the floor, tearing into each other, shredding furniture, splintering wood. Amanda grabbed the fallen knife and tried to join the fight, but she couldn't get close. The battle was pure chaos. Blood sprayed from both of them. Raja sank his teeth into muscle, but the monster's claws slashed him with terrifying precision. The living room became a war zone. Walls streaked red, furniture in ruins. Amanda struggled to see through the wreckage. Then, in a terrible moment, the werewolf drove its claws deep into Raja's chest. A brutal strike. Amanda heard the roar of agony. The tiger collapsed onto his side, gasping, blood gushing from the wound. The creature turned to Amanda and smiled. A twisted smile, too human, as if to say, "Now it's your turn." She backed against the wall, out of ammo, knife still clutched in her hand, but useless. The creature advanced, and then an explosion, not of gunfire, an explosion of fury. Raja, even near death, lunged one final time. He used every last ounce of strength to dig his claws into the creature's back and drag it down. Amanda saw the blood dripping from the tiger's jaws as he bit into the monster's neck with everything he had left. The sickening crack of bone echoed in the air. The werewolf screamed, writhing, thrashing to break free. But Raja didn't let go. Amanda grabbed the shotgun, slammed in the last silver rounds, and aimed. She fired straight into the creature's head. This time, it fell. Amanda dropped to her knees beside Raja. He was still breathing, faint, weak. She cried, holding his face, blood soaking her hands. "You saved my life. You saved me." He looked at her one last time, then closed his eyes. But he wasn't gone. Not yet. The creature was dead. The werewolf lay on the living room floor, its skull partially destroyed by the final shot. The head was twisted at an angle no living being could survive. Black blood spread across the floor like spilled oil, and the stench was unbearable. A mix of rotting flesh, burnt fur, and something acidic, chemical, that made Amanda's eyes burn. She staggered to her feet, drenched in blood, hers, Raja's, and the beast's. The shotgun hung loosely from her hand, heavy and lifeless. She stumbled toward Raja, who was still breathing, though each breath came with a tremor in his body. His chest rose and fell slowly, and his dimming eyes still followed her. Amanda knelt beside him. She touched his forehead, the blood still warm, streaking across the dark stripes of his fur. "You're still with me. I'm going to get you through this." She grabbed the medical kit she had left in the basement and worked non-stop for nearly an hour. She flushed the wound with saline, stopped the bleeding, applied sedatives, and reinforced the stitches with surgical precision. It was like treating a wounded soldier. Every time Raja moved in agony, Amanda fought back the panic clawing at her throat. When she finished, he was already asleep, alive, but fragile. She covered him with a thermal blanket and started cleaning the living room floor with rags and buckets. She couldn't let anyone see this. She couldn't risk anyone taking Raja away. Not now, not after everything. But when she approached the werewolf's body, something made her stop. The body was changing. The fur shrank, the muscles receded, the limbs twisted with dry, cracking sounds. In minutes, the beast unraveled before her eyes, as though a nightmare folding back into the body of a man. Now, lying on the living room floor, was the corpse of a human. A white man, in his 30s, dark hair, face mangled by Raja's claws and the impact of the bullet. But human, mortal. Amanda stared, a fresh wave of horror washing over her. A man, not a monster, or maybe both. In his pockets, she found a driver's license. Name, Daniel Harper. Address in Manitou Springs, a regular citizen. No criminal record. civil engineer. Nothing in his face, nothing in his life suggested what he became under the moon. Amanda dragged the body outside, behind the shed, and buried it in the frozen ground. She piled rocks over it, covered it with dry leaves. It wasn't justice, but it was all she could do. Afterward, she locked the house, turned off all the lights, and sat beside Raja. Watching the monitor, listening to the sensors, waiting. But nothing happened that night. Nothing. The monster had fallen. But the war hadn't. The next morning, the news exploded in a wave of panic. A video had been anonymously uploaded online. It showed the creature, the werewolf, running between the trees, captured by one of the thermal cameras Amanda had installed weeks before. Authorities denied its authenticity, called it a hoax, mass hysteria. But the public no longer believed anyone. Armed militias began forming blockades at the city exits. Supermarkets were looted. The state government deployed National Guard troops to control the situation. And amid all the chaos, Amanda stayed silent, watching the city unravel, because she knew the truth. And she knew Daniel Harper wasn't the only one. This was just the beginning. That afternoon, the Colorado Springs sky looked darker than usual. The heavy clouds dragged across the city like an omen. Exhausted, Amanda spent the hours tending to Raja, now lying in the basement, breathing with difficulty. The thermal blanket covered his bandaged body, and Amanda changed the dressings every few hours. She hadn't slept in nearly 2 days. But what unsettled her most wasn't Raja's condition. It was the letter. She had found it that morning among the items in Daniel Harper's pockets. A simple envelope, folded in half. Inside, a handwritten note, messy and rushed. At the top, one sentence. I am not the only one. Beneath it, a name, Jonas Beckett. And below that, an address. Outside Colorado Springs, another man, another monster. Amanda closed the letter, her fingers trembling. It felt like the house itself was collapsing around her. This hadn't been an isolated case. This was a cycle. A network of creatures. Maybe a curse spread across multiple bodies, multiple towns. She didn't know how or why. But she knew one thing. She couldn't wait for the next attack. She called McDougal, asked for information about the name. He promised to investigate, and he promised to return to the house later that night. Amanda hung up and went back to the basement. Raja was still alive, but weak. His eyes opened occasionally, just enough to follow her movements. She whispered to him softly, making silent promises that this would end, that they would survive, that she'd find the others before they came for her. She knew she had no choice now. She would hunt or be hunted. At 8 that night, McDougal arrived. He looked different, harder, paler, a rifle slung over his shoulder and a heavy backpack on his back. You read the letter? He asked bluntly. Amanda nodded. Who is Jonas Beckett? Ex-military, missing for years. Lived isolated in the mountains near Durango. There were reports of attacks there too, but nothing ever confirmed. If Harper was connected to him, then we're dealing with something much bigger than a single werewolf. Amanda crossed her arms. The exhaustion weighed on her like lead. How many more do you think there are? McDougal took a deep breath. No one knows. Some stories talk about bloodlines, men inheriting the curse, entire families. If that's true, this goes beyond the city, beyond anyone's control. A cold shiver ran up Amanda's spine. Then I need to find him, before he finds me. Not now, McDougal replied. You're hurt. Your tiger's barely alive. You need a plan, a safe place. Amanda stayed silent, but inside, the decision had already been made. Later that night, while reviewing the camera system, Amanda noticed something strange. One of the recordings, taken earlier that afternoon, showed a figure standing at the edge of the forest. It wasn't large like the previous werewolf. It was slim, average height. But it stood there for over 20 minutes, watching the house, motionless. And then it vanished, as if it had dissolved into the air. Amanda zoomed in on the video, trying to identify facial features, but the image was blurry. All she could make out was a hooded figure, and the eyes. Not yellow, like the previous monsters, but dark, lifeless, like empty glass. "Beckett," she whispered. At midnight, the alarms went off again, this time in the eastern section of the property. Amanda grabbed the rifle and went upstairs with MacDougall by her side. Raja remained in the basement, too weak to fight. They exited through the back door, crossing the darkness lit only by tactical flashlights. The cold bit through their clothes. The silence was absolute. They reached the alarm point. Nothing. But on the ground something new. Footprints. Human. Barefoot. But not normal. The toes were elongated, thin. Claw marks scratched the frozen soil, and dried blood, as if the flesh on the feet was tearing as it walked. Amanda knelt down. He was here, watching us. MacDougall kept the rifle trained on the woods. He won't attack now. He's waiting. Wants us broken. Wants to see the fear in our eyes before he moves. Amanda stood up. Then let him wait, because we're not running. And from deep in the forest came the sound. A breath. Long. Dragging. The night was freezing, and the air seemed thicker, as if the world itself was holding its breath before something terrible happened. Amanda and MacDougall retreated back into the house, barricaded the entrances again, and went silent. The new enemy, Jonas Beckett, was out there, hidden in the shadows, and unlike the previous werewolf, he seemed patient, intelligent, calculating. Amanda checked on Raja again. The tiger was still breathing, but his rhythm was uneven. He had a fever, infection. Amanda did everything she could with antibiotics and veterinary analgesics, but she didn't know how much longer he could last. The thought of losing him now, after everything, was unbearable. Upstairs, MacDougall cleaned the weapons, meticulous, silent. He didn't need to speak. They both knew. This was the last night. Either they would survive, or the house would become their tomb. At 3:37 a.m., the camera system failed. All at once. Every screen went black. No sound, no image, no recording. Amanda rushed to the control panel, checking the cables. Intact. "He cut external power," she said immediately. MacDougall had already strapped on his ballistic vest. He handed her a radio and a spare pistol. "If we get separated, don't hesitate. Shoot first." Amanda nodded. They split into defensive positions. MacDougall upstairs, covering the front of the house. Amanda in the basement, next to Raja, watching the rear section. Outside, absolute silence. Then, without warning, the wall exploded. Not from a bomb, but something, or someone, smashed straight through the side of the house like a freight train. A massive hole opened, debris flying through the basement, and Raja was thrown against the far wall. Amanda struggled to her feet, covered in dust and dried blood. Her ears rang, her chest burned, and the shotgun had been knocked out of her hands. In the middle of the basement, among the shattered boards, stood him. Jonas Beckett, but not as a man. He was bigger than the first werewolf, much bigger. His body looked carved from stone and muscle, dark skin laced with deep scars. His teeth were longer, bared in a feral grin. But the eyes were still human. And behind them, a cold, sadistic intelligence burned. Amanda crawled toward the wall, reaching for her weapon. Beckett had already seen her. He advanced slowly, claws scraping against the concrete. "I saw what you did to Daniel," he said, his voice like metal grinding against bone. "But I'm not like him." Amanda snatched the pistol and fired twice. Nothing. Beckett lunged. She rolled aside, his claw missing her face by inches. And then she heard it. A roar. Raja. He was getting up, slowly, but on his feet. Amanda watched the impossible happen. The tiger, even torn apart, charged forward with everything he had left. He slammed into Beckett, claws sinking deep into his back. The two collided like ancient beasts locked in war. Beckett roared, turned, and hurled Raja against the ceiling. The impact shattered a wooden beam. Raja crashed down but got up again. The fight had just begun. Amanda dove for the shotgun, repositioned herself at the edge of the basement. Every second mattered. The two monsters clashed violently, shaking the floor. Raja bit into Beckett's shoulder so hard that a stream of dark blood sprayed across the room. Beckett retaliated with a brutal strike that fractured part of the tiger's muzzle. But Raja didn't retreat. Amanda shouted, "Raja, move back!" The tiger obeyed instantly, leaping aside. Amanda fired. The round hit Beckett's left flank, searing through flesh. He screamed, contorting in pain, but still didn't fall. Amanda reloaded, aiming for his head. Beckett was faster. He launched at her like a missile. Amanda fell, the shotgun flying from her hands. Beckett grabbed her by the neck, lifting her with one hand as if she weighed nothing. "You should have died with your parents," he hissed. But before he could finish the strike, something slammed into him from behind. Raja. One last, desperate attack. The tiger bit into Beckett's leg, dragging him back. Amanda fell to the floor, coughing, gasping for air. Beckett fell, Raja on top of him. Amanda saw the moment. She grabbed the fallen hunting knife and charged. She plunged the blade into Beckett's chest with everything she had. He screamed, but he didn't die. He fought on. Beckett roared, twisting his entire body, and hurled Raja against the far wall with such force that the tiger hit the concrete and collapsed, groaning in agony. Amanda screamed and tried to recover the shotgun, but Beckett was already on her again. He struck with his claws, and she threw herself to the ground, rolling over broken planks and shattered glass. MacDougall appeared at the top of the stairs, rifle in hand. "Amanda, down!" She dropped flat. MacDougall fired a precise burst. The silver round slammed into Beckett's shoulder, tearing through muscle and bone. The creature staggered, stumbled back, and smashed into the support column, splintering it with the impact. Beckett turned his glowing eyes toward MacDougall and let out a low growl that vibrated through the entire basement. "You brought this on yourselves," he rasped, his voice strangely human for a moment. Amanda, gasping, crawled toward Raja, trying to drag the tiger to safety. His breathing was shallow, irregular, but he was still alive. She whispered against his ear, "Stay with me. Just a little longer. Please." Beckett moved forward again, ignoring the bleeding wound. His claws scraped across the cement floor, leaving deep marks behind. MacDougall switched to the shotgun slung across his back and fired both barrels at close range. The blast threw Beckett sideways, but he didn't fall. He roared, the sound echoing like thunder, and lunged straight at MacDougall. The two crashed into the staircase, splintering wood, exchanging blows at brutal speed. Amanda grabbed the fallen pistol and fired 3 more times into Beckett's ribs. Black blood splattered the wall, steaming on contact with the cold air. Still, the monster wouldn't die. "Silver's not enough!" MacDougall shouted, pinned beneath Beckett's massive weight. Amanda's hand closed around the hunting knife, still stained with Beckett's blood. She looked up at him, towering, unstoppable, and saw one spot on his chest glowing faintly under the fur. The heart. She didn't think. She acted. Amanda lunged forward and drove the blade straight into that exact point. Beckett froze. For the first time, his expression shifted. Shock, then rage, then fear. His claws faltered. His breath came ragged, and he let out an unearthly howl that shook the basement walls. He swiped wildly, striking Amanda's shoulder and sending her crashing to the ground. MacDougall kicked the creature off, grabbed the shotgun and fired one last round directly into the wound Amanda had opened. This time, Beckett fell. The massive body hit the floor with a thunderous crack, sending dust and splinters into the air. He twitched once, twice, then went completely still. Silence. Only Amanda's ragged breathing and Raja's labored growls filled the room. She collapsed next to the tiger, stroking his head, her hands trembling violently. "It's over," she whispered, almost convincing herself. But MacDougall was already scanning the basement, his weapon still raised. He knew better. Something wasn't right. Beckett's body wasn't decaying. The first werewolf, Daniel Harper, had reverted to human form after death. But Beckett remained as he was. Massive, monstrous, fur bristling, claws still extended. MacDougall knelt beside the corpse, touching the black blood pooling beneath it. It hissed against his glove, burning through the material. "This isn't the same curse?" he muttered grimly. "He wasn't just a werewolf." Amanda looked at him, confused and exhausted. "Then what was he?" MacDougall didn't answer. They worked in silence for hours, sealing the broken wall, cleaning the basement, and stitching Amanda's wounds. Raja was stabilized again, though his fever persisted. They were alive, but barely. As dawn broke, Amanda finally climbed upstairs and collapsed onto the couch. MacDougall stood by the window, scanning the tree line outside. "Something's wrong," he said quietly. Amanda forced her eyes open. "What now?" "I checked Beckett's pockets. No ID, no phone, nothing. It's like he didn't exist on paper." "Then how do we find the others?" MacDougall finally turned toward her. "We don't wait for them to find us." 2 days later, Amanda and MacDougall drove to Durango. It was nearly 400 kilometers from Colorado Springs, and the entire drive wound through dense forests and endless mountain passes. Snow fell heavily, covering the road like a silent warning. Raja lay sedated in the back of the truck, bundled in thermal blankets, still recovering. As they approached Durango, the GPS stopped working. Amanda frowned. "That's the third time it's cut out." "Not a coincidence," MacDougall replied, checking his rifle in the passenger seat. "Signals being jammed." The deeper they drove, the quieter the world became. No cars, no houses, no wildlife sounds, just the sound of tires crunching on snow. Then they saw it. The road ended at a massive rusted gate. A sign hung crookedly from the top, half buried under ice. Black Pine Sanctuary. Amanda exchanged a glance with MacDougall. "I thought this place was abandoned," she whispered. "It was," he replied, 40 years ago. So why were there fresh tire tracks leading inside? They left the truck and approached the gate on foot, moving carefully, rifles raised. Snow crunched softly under their boots. The wind howled through the dead trees. Amanda's breath came out in white clouds, matching her rising anxiety. The sanctuary grounds stretched endlessly. Old wooden cabins sat buried in frost, windows broken, doors hanging loose. Chains rattled against collapsed fences. Everything screamed of abandonment. And yet, faint trails of footprints moved between the cabins. And then they saw them. Dozens of claw marks on the cabin walls. Deep, fresh. Amanda's heart pounded in her ears. "They're here," she whispered. MacDougall crouched low, scanning the footprints on the snow. "Not just one or two," he said. "There are at least 5 different sizes." 5 different beasts! Amanda raised her rifle, cold sweat dripping down her back. And then, from the far end of the sanctuary, a single howl echoed through the forest. Long, powerful, close. Amanda and MacDougall advanced slowly, staying low, every sense alert. The sanctuary was massive. Nearly 20 abandoned cabins scattered between the dense pine trees, all covered in ice and silence. The cold was brutal, biting at their fingers through the gloves. Every shadow felt alive. Every sound carried weight. Raja remained sedated in the truck, parked behind the gates. If things went wrong here, he wouldn't stand a chance. The two reached the center of the sanctuary, a wide clearing with a frozen fountain cracked by decades of neglect. At the base of the fountain lay something strange, a pile of bones, dozens of them, human and animal mixed together, stacked deliberately like some kind of offering. Amanda crouched, examining the remains. "This wasn't random," she whispered. "This was ritualistic." MacDougall scanned the area, rifle raised. "They're marking territory." Suddenly, movement. A figure darted between 2 cabins, impossibly fast. Amanda spun, aiming her rifle, but the figure disappeared before she could fire. A second later, a different sound, soft snow compressing under heavy weight, came from behind them. They weren't alone. From the shadows of the broken cabins, 3 shapes emerged. Massive, hair bristling, eyes glowing faintly red against the dim light. Werewolves, different from Beckett, larger, more feral, less human. Their breaths steamed through the cold air, and their claws scraped against the frozen earth as they circled Amanda and MacDougall. "Back to back," MacDougall ordered, lowering his voice. Amanda nodded and locked into position behind him, her rifle steady despite her pounding heart. The first beast lunged. MacDougall fired a clean burst, silver rounds tearing through its chest. It fell, writhing violently in the snow, howling like a dying animal. But before Amanda could even breathe, the second beast struck from the side, slamming into her with crushing force. She rolled across the icy ground, coughing blood, but she kept her grip on the rifle. Spinning on instinct, she fired 3 consecutive shots. The rounds ripped through the beast's neck, sending it collapsing into the snow with a guttural roar. "2 down!" she gasped, struggling to her feet. But the third one wasn't like the others. This one stood taller than the rest, nearly 8 feet of muscle and rage, its fur black as obsidian, its face scarred with burns. It snarled, saliva dripping from jagged fangs, and stared directly at Amanda. It didn't attack immediately. It studied her, like it knew her. Then, in a low, broken voice, it spoke. "Amanda." She froze. MacDougall shouted, "Don't listen! Shoot!" But Amanda hesitated. That voice. She'd heard it before, years ago. Buried deep in memories she had locked away. The beast tilted its head, and for a split second its face shifted, just enough for Amanda to see him. Her father. "Dad?" she whispered, tears welling in her eyes. MacDougall fired without hesitation. The bullet ripped into the beast's shoulder, snapping it out of its trance. It roared, shaking the air, and charged with monstrous speed. Amanda dove aside just as claws slammed into the frozen ground where she had been standing. The fight began. MacDougall unleashed a hail of silver rounds, forcing the beast back, but its skin seemed to resist penetration. Bullets slowed it, but they didn't stop it. The creature struck MacDougall like a freight train, slamming him into the side of a cabin so hard the entire wall cracked. Amanda screamed, firing again and again until the rifle clicked empty. She threw it aside, grabbed Beckett's old hunting knife, and faced the towering monster. It lunged. She rolled under its massive frame, slicing deep into its flank as she passed. Black blood splattered the snow, hissing violently on contact. The beast turned with unnatural speed and backhanded her across the clearing, sending her crashing into the fountain's base. Pain exploded through her ribs, but she forced herself to stand, blood dripping from her nose and mouth. "Come on!" she screamed, raising the knife. The beast snarled and charged again. This time, Amanda didn't move. At the last second, she dropped low and plunged the blade directly into the creature's abdomen, pushing with all her strength until the hilt touched fur. The beast howled, its claws flailing wildly, slicing Amanda's shoulder open. She refused to let go. McDougal, barely conscious, aimed one last round. "Move!" he shouted. Amanda dropped to the ground. The bullet struck true, straight into the wound Amanda had opened. The beast roared, stumbled, then fell hard into the snow, its claws twitching violently before going still. Silence. Only the sound of Amanda's labored breathing remained. Amanda collapsed onto her knees, staring at the massive corpse. Her father's face flickered once more beneath the monstrous features, fading into lifelessness. A broken sob escaped her lips, but she forced herself to breathe. McDougal limped toward her, one arm holding his ribs, blood soaking his vest. "You okay?" he asked, voice hoarse. She wiped her face with a trembling hand. "No," she whispered, "but we're alive." He nodded faintly. "For now." They stayed like that for several minutes, the frozen wind howling through the abandoned sanctuary, surrounded by the bodies of monsters. But deep in the woods, a single distant howl rose into the morning air. Long, low, answering. Amanda and McDougal exchanged a grim look. This wasn't over. Not even close. Amanda and McDougal's battle in the frozen sanctuary is chilling proof that some secrets should have stayed buried forever. But this was only the beginning. The hunt isn't over, and the shadows still hold more than they've revealed. Like this video if you felt the tension of this fight for survival, and comment below which moment made your heart race the most. Share it with someone who needs to understand that some sanctuaries hide creatures far older and darker than we imagine. And if you're truly fearless, subscribe to Mr. Midnight Horror and turn on the notification bell, so you'll never walk into the darkness unprepared again.